So my life has gone through, I think, more twists and turns than many people experience in multiple lifetimes. By the time I was 43, and at 43,
you recreated your life at 43.
At 43, I completely, from ground up, complete reinvention of my life. And I went back to my biggest passion, which is writing. I used to write as a child. There is a middle name, mine would be changed.
Okay. RamG
Vallath. My life from a very small village in Kerala, studied in a Malayalam medium school, government school.
Tell us about how did you recreate your life once you're back and after this happened. I'm sure this period of, rebooting, which sounds very interesting, but I'm sure was tough on you. Tell us about how did you recreate your life, which is again a very intentional change journey we're talking about. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a very special guest, someone whose story truly embodies resilience, reinvention, and positive impact. RamG Vallath is a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and founder of Be Boundless, where he inspires thousands with his talks on growth mindset and bouncing back from adversity, from senior corporate roles to facing a life-altering illness, and then transforming his journey to empower others. RamG is a real-life example of thriving through change. Let's hear his story of change. Welcome, Ram.
Hi, Jaya, thank you.
Welcome to this podcast called I'm the Change. And before we start conversing, I do want to tell our audience that we have not selected the dress code for this podcast. It just happened. I'm super happy how we resonated on that front.
I know.
Start with. Telepathy. Okay. I don't know what it is, but it's really a piece of joy right now. So Ram, thank you for sharing your time and your story in advance. So I have heard a little bit of it so far. And this podcast is all about talking about the journey of change. What's your connection with change?
So if there is a middle name, mine would be changed.
Okay. RamG
Vallath.
Oh, okay. Say more. Tell us more about your story.
So my life has gone through, I think, more twists and turns than many people experience in multiple lifetimes. Started my life from a very small village in Kerala, studied in a Malayalam medium school, government school, sat on the floor for many of the years because the school didn't have benches and desks. Then from there, I managed to get into IIT Madras with a terrific rank. I was in love with the subjects, physics, chemistry, math. And so that I was in the zone when I was preparing for the entrance exams and managed to get through with a very good rank. In IIT, I actually lost all interest and then almost flunked out. So,
How did that happen?
So I keep telling people I became very spiritual. My favorite spirit was Old Monk Rum and Bullet Beer.
Okay.
But no, actually, that's sort of simplifying it a lot. What happened, I think, was that I wanted to be number one. And having come from a school where I was about 10 percentage points better than the number two. And then I suddenly realized that in IIT that everybody is at the same level and I would be at best an average student. So rather than compete and put my effort into be at the top on academics, I thought I would sort of reposition myself as a class rowdy.
Okay.
And I did that very well.
You were managing your perceptions, it seems.
Absolutely. So, and I became the class rowdy. I would actually sit outside, bunk the class, sit outside, roll a cigarette and smoke at the professor and those kind of things.
Was it an effort to look different to others?
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
so.
See, I can never figure this out. I know what happened to me at that time.
Okay.
I've tried to analyze it a lot. I do a lot of reflection. I think this is now my current theory of why I went into that downward spiral.
Okay.
Good thing was that, so I failed in so many of the subjects that I was on the verge of being thrown out without a degree. But then good sense prevailed and I confessed everything to my parents. They supported me. They stayed in IIT for a month and helped me sort of pick my pieces up again. And I graduated in 5 years instead of 4 years. So that is the first setback which I had, which is first challenge.
So they were allowed to stay with you in the campus, and
there was a guest house on campus, so they could stay there.
Okay, and what role did they play to bring you back to the?
So they would meet me every day, and they would chat with me, just make me feel that I'm supported, and that I thought was the most important thing, right? Rather than being judgmental, they realized that, they had a pretty bright son who went into college, and obviously something must have impacted me. And rather than spend their time shouting at me or judging me, they thought the best thing was to accept the situation and support me the best way they can.
So what I'm hearing is that this change story was all about, getting that support at the right time and not being judged and not being lectured and just the loved ones showing up for you.
Very much. Absolutely.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. The power of presence, right?
Yes.
And what happened after that?
So then I realized that I don't have any knowledge of my subject, which is electronics.
Hmm.
So I then got into management.
Okay.
And I studied in XLRI, finished my graduation. Then I had a rocketing career, actually. First 6 years I spent in Titan. Titan was the lowest paid job on campus. But it was one of the sought after jobs because Titan was a fantastic marketing company. And a lot of people wanted to be there. So in spite of being the lowest paid job, it was highly sought after. I don't know how I managed to get it. I had, in those days, I had this slight inhibition of speaking in English because I had come from a Malayalam medium background. So GDs I used to sort of completely mess up. But in Titan's GD, I sort of managed to speak 3-4 sentences, which made a lot of sense. And just those 3-4 sentences, they selected me, actually. Interview, I did well. So I got through. And I spent 6 years there because the learning was fantastic. It also was a company, it is still a company which respects people a lot. And so some of the very basic behavioral traits which I learned in Titan, they have given me some very strong foundation in terms of respecting people, in terms of creating a environment where it is people feel safe, psychologically safe, things which great teams have, right? So that helped me catapult in my career, actually, because after Titan, 6 years in Titan, in the next 4 years, I found myself as a country manager of a tech company. And my salary had gone up tenfold in those 4 years. Actually, tenfold in about 2.5 years.
And how is that to deal with that kind of a change? Too
Right.
much of success, too much of money. What does
Actually,
it
no,
do to you?
I don't think I went through that because I think the Titan stint made me reasonably humble. And also the fact that I come from a background where I studied in villages with my best friend was a bus driver's son, those kind of things. So I never had those kind of problems. I'm very lucky about that. But then the last job I ended up in, the company sort of went from a $6 billion company to a $2 billion company in about 1 year. They hived off division. They sacked a lot of people. And I was not sacked, but I knew that this company is not going anywhere. So I got into the telecom industry. So one of the things that helped me was the ability to move from industry to industry without too much of a problems. Sorry, I got into Compaq, which is a IT company. And then from there to Ecom, which is where I became the country manager. And then from there to Airtel. So it's across industries. I think what helped me was that I was keen on learning. So I would actually spend time to understand new products, new technology. The barrier to change was lower for me because I was very curious as a learner. So I would like to spend time learning new things, whether it's a new industry, new product, whatever. And so my life then took off in Airtel. I became the youngest chief operating officer in the telecom industry at the age of 34.
And this is which location you're saying?
In fact, we started the Tamil Nadu circle for Airtel, which is based in Coimbatore. So Chennai was a different circle, Tamil Nadu was a separate circle.
Okay.
So Chennai city and the rest of Tamil Nadu. And there I became the CEO at 34. And at that time, I thought I had really arrived in life. My ambition was to become a global CEO of a Fortune 500 company by the age of 45. And I thought it was very possible because, from 24 to 30, 34, 10 years, I had reached this level.
Okay.
Another 11 years to go, it seemed very easy and very possible. And that's when the next big googly game, it started as a tremor in my fingers. Every time I tried to hold a pencil or a pen or a fork or a spoon, and a slight loss of balance. And I had no idea what it was. Went and met some doctors. Nobody could diagnose the condition. And this kept getting worse over the next 7-8 years.
Okay.
I switched jobs a couple of times thinking that it's a work pressure which is doing this. And at 41, I found myself as director of operations for HP India. And there I had a viral fever, and the condition got completely spiked. I mean, it just shot up. And within 3 days, I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't move my hands or my feet even 1 centimeter, and I couldn't keep my eyelids open. I couldn't speak. So then they wheeled me to the hospital, and they figured out that that's when the diagnosis really happened, that autoimmune condition. Then they put me on all kinds of medications, and I had to reinvent my life again, because somewhere down the line I lost my job as well. I was sort of
That is what age, Ram?
41, 41,
41.
42. Yeah.
And how did it really, I'm sure, I mean, just take me through your emotional journey at that point in time. What were you going through?
That time, from the time I was in Airtel, when this condition started, we were very worried about what's going to happen, because I had no idea what's happening. I could see my body was sort of slowly, inexorably becoming worse. And my wife had quit her job because she had to move to Coimbatore. She's a junior of mine, actually. She's an HR professional, and she used to be HR manager in Hutch, which later on became Vodafone, etc. And so she had taken a break, and then she started looking for a job again, because it looked like, I might suddenly become unable to work, and she had to earn the salary. So we looked around, and luckily she got into Google, and she worked there for about 15 years after that. So that was a huge help. But this entire fear of what's happening without knowing why the body is going through this, that is at the first 8 years, when it was undiagnosed and misdiagnosed. So
you're saying 7 to 8 years of this back and forth happened.
7 to 8 years of gradual degradation of my condition, and without
That's a long time.
diagnosis, with a couple of wrong diagnoses, actually.
Okay. And then what happened?
And so that is extremely scary, especially because my kids were both young kids going to school, and obviously we had great dreams for them, how to support them through this entire thing. But I think I found a way of sort of keeping myself positive, which is I fell back on my favorite one, which is my sense of humor. So, I used to read PG Waters as a child. And in fact, that's another interesting story. I couldn't read English books till I reached high school. Okay. And my father would actually read PG Waters stories and translate that into Malayalam without losing the humor. And
that's fun.
And that really helped me, it helped instill a lot of humor in me. So I would look at the absurdity of any situation. And so I told myself that, I need to keep laughing and smiling. In any meeting in the office, I would actually be the first one to crack a joke and make light of the situation.
This was after when you started recovering, or when was this?
This is when I was at my worst, actually. And the worst was really bad, because I couldn't even button my shirt. There are times when I had to travel, and I would take 90 minutes to button up my shirts in the hotel room because of jet lag, and the condition would get worse. And sometimes I had to lie on the bed to button up my shirt because I couldn't hold up my hands. The strength wasn't there.
And you were traveling alone that time?
Yeah, I mean, I had to travel to US and Singapore and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a nightmare, actually.
Yeah, I
can
imagine.
And then I couldn't tell people because I was worried at that time whether, people would think that there's some serious health condition, I would get sacked and things like that. So yeah, so it is tough.
Tough, I'm sure.
And I had to find coping mechanisms for everything. For example, there would be a dinner in the evening and people would be standing around with their plates and eating. I couldn't, first of all, stand itself. I would keep swaying, and it was very difficult.
People could figure out around you there's something is going on types.
I suppose they might have. I was not, I was sort of trying to hide it at that point in time.
Of course.
Which is looking
it's
back.
Obvious.
But looking back, it was maybe stupid of me. I should have just told people, and it would have taken a lot of pressure off me, actually.
Yeah, but I think you try to figure it out yourself first, right? When you're going through adversity.
So then, then finally, then I lost my job, and I had this 20 lakhs per annum medical bills, 2 kids going through school, no job. Luckily, wife was earning, and that is advantage.
It's a blessing.
But I couldn't go through my treatments because there was no insurance cover after that. So there's a lot of problems. But then I kept looking for solutions, and I figured out a treatment in the US where there was a doctor doing a clinical trial for autoimmune conditions.
Okay.
And I reached out to the doctor. The doctor explained his protocol. I had to speak to my neurologist in Delhi, and that person said, No chance. Don't go for this. This is like unproven.
It's a
And
lot of risk. It's a lot
it
of
is a
risk to
risk,
go for
but
something.
I was willing to take that risk because the option was what I was going through, which is far worse, you know. And the doctor did say that there is a 2% probability of mortality. And I keep joking to people saying that in India, when you cross the road, there's a 2%, 2% probability of mortality. This is not too bad, actually.
Okay, so you took that chance. You went to
Yeah,
US.
that's my wife and I. We went to US together, stayed in the best part of Chicago in a nice apartment, and we had a good time actually. 3 months, you know. And so there was a treatment which lasted about 3 months. In the last 15 days was the actual treatment. Before that, there were some preparatory things and things like that. Then they rebooted my body literally because they killed my entire immune system using chemo and some other toxic substances, and then regenerated my stem cells, my immune cells using some stem cells. And the new immune system did not attack my body like the previous immune system had.
So rebooted your body. That's a big thing to I'm hearing. I mean, are you really joking here?
No, it is actually that, you know, because what they did was my entire immune system had to be killed.
And replaced with a new one.
And replaced with a new one. So they take out my stem cells, which finally generate the new immune cells. They take it out and keep it in storage. Then they killed the immune system. And when the immune system reached zero, they injected stem cells back, which generated a brand new immune system. And the brand new immune system did not have the bad memory of the previous immune system.
This must be of what 3 months period that you had to go through this treatment.
So literally I was rebooted actually. It's like, you know, when your computer doesn't work, you reboot it, it starts working. RamG started working after that.
And did it have any impact on your humor?
Actually, I must
got better.
The humor like went up drastically because of that. I think there are two reasons. And I keep saying that it's because the chemo and the rat and rabbit poison they put into me was like old monk rum, but it is not actually. I think that is not the reason. The reason was I was looking forward to a better life, and the fact that I was not working, no pressure on me of any kind. My wife and I were sitting together in this very nice part of Chicago, and we were bonding and talking nonsense and having fun and all that. That is on one part. The other one was that every day then I could see my body recovering a little bit at a time, becoming better and better. And then what I did was actually wrote out typed in this Excel sheet, 180 days. Each date I put 27 exercise career targets. So every muscle had to be exercised. So I put targets for each exercise and for the next 180 days. And each week, the target would go up, you know. And so when you have a daily target and you're hitting it every day, then obviously the dopamine released in your brain sort of makes you feel really awesome, right? So I was going through this dopamine 27 times a day, every day, and that was keeping me on a high. And then I could see improvements on a daily basis. So yeah, I think that helped me. And that entire humor got channelized into my first book, which I wrote started from the hospital bed in Chicago, and I had to use a voice to text software to write the book because I couldn't type.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Oops, the Mighty Gurgle.
Okay.
It's about an evolved pumpkin from millions of years into the future. It's a species called gurgles. So this gurgle, his name is Oops.
Okay.
And Oops has traveled back in time to save humanity from destruction because human beings are about to be attacked by a planet of green pigs because they are very pissed off with human beings for playing Angry Birds and killing green pigs.
This is a fiction.
I should hope so. Otherwise, we should be scared of all the green pigs in the world.
Yeah, I'm like, let me get it right. Is it a fiction? Okay, interesting. So it's your story about how did you come across this?
No. It's a
fiction.
Science fiction.
Oh, okay.
It's a science fiction for children. It's a humorous science fiction.
Okay.
And the one who laughed maximum writing the book was myself, and more than. I don't know about kids. A lot of kids have told me it's epic and people have laughed one laugh a page kind of a thing.
Okay.
It's really humorous and it's got humor for all age groups. And I say that it's a book written for this very narrow age group of 9 to 99.
Okay. Tell us about how did you recreate your life once you're back and after this happened? I'm sure this period of, rebooting, which sounds very interesting, but I'm sure was tough on you. Tell us about how did you recreate your life, which is again a very intentional change journey we're talking about.
Yeah. So I think the best part of it was that I managed to accept that my life is different now, that I cannot get back into corporate life, or
Okay.
definitely not the level that I was at, because my body wouldn't support me. And so the moment I accepted it, I started looking for, then what? Now what do I do? What are my strengths? What do I leverage? And that really helped in, because I thought of myself completely ground up. What are the strengths I have? And I hit upon strengths which uh, were not the ones I was leveraging in my corporate work, though it was there. It was sense of humor, wackiness, ability to learn lots of new things. And I started using those.
And this is what age, Ram?
By the time I was 43. Yeah. And at
So you
43,
recreated your life at 43.
at 43, I completely, from ground up, right? Complete reinvention of my life. And I went back to my biggest passion, which is writing. I used to write as a child. Malayalam, in Malayalam, I used to write poetry and short stories. I had always wanted to become a writer, an author. I used to read voraciously. So the more you read, obviously, the more ideas you get also, right? So, but corporate life sort of stole that away from me, and this is the best opportunity to get back to that. And I started writing, and as I said, this entire chemo and everything and thing made me very wacky also. So out came a very humorous book. And then I started following up on opportunities, So there was a hiatus in my life when I had written the book and I had sent it to a lot of publishers waiting for result. I didn't know what to do. So I started exploring multiple things. But the one thing I did was I started investing in myself, in what I like to do. So I started learning courses on Coursera.
Okay.
This is back in 2012. And I had this fascination for biology because I went through this treatment, which is very scientific, etc. So I learned about the immune system. I learned about genetics, learned about evolution. I did a few courses in each of these. And it's just the fact that I was doing something constructive rather than sitting and worrying. That really helped.
Ram, can you talk to me about some of the low points in this journey? I'm sure it wasn't as easy as you're telling us right now. What were some of the breaking points and pivotal points for you?
So this happened before I went for the treatment. I was sacked from HP when I was director of operations for India. I remember that day I sat in the room after I was actually, my body was in shambles, but I would take on additional responsibilities at work because I wanted to be contributing. The more I contributed, I thought the less I would feel bad about my body condition. So I took on additional responsibilities and I used to look forward to going to work. That Monday morning, in fact, I put a Facebook post saying that looking forward to another great week at work. I still have this saved, that post, the screenshot of that post. And my wife told me, why do you do stupid things like this? You were going to jinx the day. And I said, come on, what's wrong with you? I don't believe in all this nonsense. I went to the office and first call I got was from my boss, who was vice president operations for Asia Pacific, telling me that I've been sacked. So I sat in that room and cried, I just couldn't believe what was happening. Why was fate giving me one after the other, one slap after the other? Is it ever going to stop? And I remember calling up my wife and telling her, maybe these people have sacked me. Can you please come and pick me up? She immediately left office, came, picked me up from the office, drove me home. At home, my parents were there and they heard about it. And it was like a house where there was a death in the family. There was such absolute quiet. Nobody knew what is happening. And that day was possibly the worst day in my life. But again, by the end of the day, I had realized that this is it. I need to accept this and I move on. And so I contacted my boss back and then we figured out which is the best way for me to exit. They gave me a 6 months time actually. And that 6 months, my division delivered the best results because I realized that, I was a professional and I had to behave like a professional. Every day I was earning a salary, I had to give the best of my effort. And I would go on a high rather than go on a low with my reputation intact. So I did that.
Your internal optimism came handy for you, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, I think optimism and professionalism. I mean,
Professionalism.
see, finally, irrespective of what they have done to me, my reputation, which I have built up over the last previous 17 years or so, that was very dear to me. Now, I'm not going to spoil that and flush it down the toilet because somebody else took a wrong decision.
That's very inspiring, Ram.
So that was one of the lowest points. Then after that, a friend of mine contacted me and saying that he had a lot of respect for me. He had just recently quit his job and he was starting up a training organization. So he came home to meet me and said, why don't you join me and we can become partners and we can start this. I will do all the running around. I want you as a person with a lot of experience, and your wisdom and gravitas, etc., would help us, etc. So I was thinking very seriously about that. And I said, I'll get back to you, Arun. And then took the lift down with him, and his car came and he just said, bye, Ramji, and slapped me on the back. And I fell. And I had this terrible pain on my leg. And my wife took me to the hospital. And the doctor said, you have a fracture on here. Now, and I had actually fixed up a consulting assignment with another startup company where they are paying me a good amount of money. And I was, my God, I can't even go to that now, because I can't walk. And so again, one more slap on the face by fate. I sat on a wheelchair in that hospital and I started crying, and I told my wife, and I was all the time thinking of my wife who has had to handle this, poor thing. She had to stretch so much. She was earning salary for the family. She had to look after me. She had to look after the kids. She had to take care of everybody. And I just felt so guilty about what I was putting her through. And I cried and I said, baby, I'm so sorry. And I hope, please don't leave me for this. Please don't leave me, I said. And she was like, she was furious. What is wrong with you? Am I going to leave you ever? I mean, and then she also cried and hugged me and all, So that was maybe the second lowest point in my life. By the way, then the doctor had actually misdiagnosed. The next day, another doctor looked at me and said, you don't have a fracture, and took the cast off. And then I could go for the damn consulting job, where I became a chief operating officer in that startup.
Okay. At a hindsight, you had a good moment with your wife.
Yeah.
You got to know whether she'll leave you or not.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
These are some of the tough moments. But after that, so once you've been through all this, ringer after ringer, crucible after crucible, then you learn. You learn not to lose your cool.
Yeah.
And the good thing about me is I don't immediately get impacted. I take time in absorbing things. I don't panic. I take my time in terms of figuring out what to do next, rather than go into a tizzy in terms of when something negative happens. So
then, coming back to your time when you were recreating your life, you started writing. Then what happened?
So then, once you're an author, people think you are a bit of a cat's whiskers, So you get this aura around you. I don't know why, but you do. I mean, people think you're sort of intellectual. So even though I had written a book about pumpkins and green pigs, and so I started being invited to schools to talk to kids. And you said you wrote that book from voice to text. Yeah, because I couldn't type. Yeah, I mean, that's very inspiring, because so many of us face author's block. Even if we have everything in place, that itself is very inspiring, that if you really want to put something on the paper, you have so many ways to do it. Yes, that is very true. It's not about time. It's not about any other ability. And then the school started inviting you for talking about your book. I'm sure you became... So I converted those into beautiful science workshops for kids, using characters from my book. Science is another passion of mine. So kids started loving it. And I've actually had 1,000 children in one hall listening to me for one whole hour. Wow. And every 2 minutes, there would be roars of laughter. And they were transfixed, So I realized, my God, I have the ability to sort of make people happy. That is the high you get in life, Yes. When you can make people happy, you become so charged up in life, right? Correct. And that just got me on a completely different trip. And then I was invited to a company as a keynote speaker for one event. And that is so kind of that company. And because one of my friends was working there, and I had sent him a link to my book saying that buy it right now and all. And he forwarded to his boss. And the boss said, okay, we will buy 100 of his books for all our employees who come for the event if he promises to come and give a speech.
And you've written 3 books, is what I understand.
That was the first book that time.
This Oops you're talking about.
The same Funny Pumpkin book.
Funny Pumpkin book, okay.
And I just talked about my life in that thing. And those people voted it the best event of the evening.
Okay? My God, that's so good.
And then I realized, wow, okay, it's not just kids. I can actually give Gyan to adults, and they seem to be liking it. And from there, I became a speaker. Then I wrote my second book, which is From Ouch to Oops is the name of the book. It's my life story. And I have sort of like a true science buff. I have dedicated to all the protons in the universe who stay positive in spite of all the negativity whizzing around them.
Wow.
So that became a bestseller from day one. And, life has been great. I've written a third book about 3 years back called Active Parenting. It's about how to parent children to become very positive in life.
And that's obviously inspiration coming from your own life.
It is actually, I was originally planning to do that. Then I realized that is very limiting. So I actually enrolled for a diploma in child psychology. I took 4 years to research various aspects of child psychology and parenting. And so the book has a lot of learnings from my life, learning from how I parented my children. Many mistakes I've made. It is full of many mistakes.
Can you talk about one?
At the age of 2, my daughter was sitting next to me and she was playing with some blocks. And my wife and I noticed that every time she picked up a block and put it there, she was using a particular word. And we were wondering, what is this word she is using? Then we realized the F word. And I realized that is because of me, because I am very liberal in using these words.
Okay.
2-year-old kid has picked up this word. Okay. So that is one of the lessons, one of the mistakes I had made. Many other mistakes. And I once lost my cool about some food which was served to me at home. And I threw my plate in front of the kids and they were aghast, and I was aghast at myself. I don't usually do that kind of thing. Yeah. I came back later and apologized to everybody. So that was another learning, another mistake. Dozens of mistakes.
I'm sure you have learned from that as well.
Once I slapped my son a lot on his bum, but still, hitting is not the right thing to do as a parent. And I cried after that.
So the fact that you're talking about it and you're okay to share these mistakes is, I'm sure you've learned from it and you've become a different person. What is that you want to leave with this audience about change? Because it seems that change, and you, like you said, is a middle name. You have gone through change like multiple times. What advice would you give it to listeners about change? Because there is a very famous line about change is hard. I have a different take on that, but what's your take on how change is?
I think change is hard is a bit of a myth, I think, in my opinion.
Really? Okay. Can you say more about that?
Because it depends, right? For me, now, I love change. I thrive on change. And immediately I look for opportunities if there is a change. And I think the reason for that is over many, many changes, I've managed to practice how to become good at it, at handling change, and also now how to use the change to my advantage.
Okay.
And since I have succeeded multiple times, it is now become ingrained in my brain, right? That change is good.
You have succeeded after adopting the change is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. Each time my life went through a makeover or a change, I have managed to come up better than what I was earlier. And that is because I did a few things that I know I know how to handle change now.
Right.
And a few things are continuous learning, ability to say that, okay, ability to accept things ASAP without going into that loop of,
why me? Why is this
happening to me? Anger, resentment,
denial, resentment.
So you shorten that to
cycle
a few seconds if you can, and then go on to now, what do I do now? How do I make the best of this? And the shorter that cycle can be, and I'm not saying you sort of close your heart to the problems that you might face. You can do that, but so accepting is, that is part of acceptance, right? This has happened now. These are the difficulties I'm going to face. Be cognizant of that. Feel that anxiety, etc. But shorten the time frame. And the sooner you start using the prefrontal cortex to figure out how to take things forward, rather than the amygdala, which is the one which is giving you the anxiety and the anger and fear and things like that. the easier it becomes to cope with change. And the more you do that, then you will actually find opportunities which will make you better than what you were earlier. So that is my theory on change. That's why I said change is hard is a myth. If you have the right mindset and you can train your mind to actually have the right mindset, you will start looking at change as a great opportunity. You'll start looking forward to change.
You can start using it like an opportunity
Absolutely.
to build a better
Springboard.
life.
Yeah.
And I'm so inspired sitting here listening
you see,
to your story.
I changed my life goal around the time I wrote my second book. But this is about 7-8 years back. And the new life goal is to touch 1 million lives positively, right?
You keep account of that?
It's very difficult to actually do a count, but I think I've crossed 1 million now.
Wow. How have you done that?
In many ways, right? One is, of course, there are LinkedIn posts of mine which have touched million.
Interesting.
Views, right? But that's not the key thing. I've delivered about 200 talks. I have written 3 books, which have all done pretty well. And I've been working in RamG Foundation for the last, they've given me a lot of flexibility. So I'm a bit of a consultant, but I'm actually handling a pretty important role. During COVID, and this is where again, learning comes in so useful. Remember I told you about genetics and immunology and all that I learned when I was sitting joblessly. When COVID happened, and before that, I was working in the foundation in a very small kind of a role, which is to edit a science magazine for school teachers, which I had launched actually. When the COVID happened and the RamG Foundation, which was into education before that, we decided that we need to work in the space of COVID work because there's so much required across the country to support people. And they needed somebody to lead the strategy for the health part of COVID work. There's another part, which is distribution of food and stuff like that. But the health part, they needed somebody with the science understanding, with the ability to understand the math behind the spreading, the how does the infection spread, the entire science behind that. Somebody who has an ability to talk to people who are experts in the field, understand what they do, and bring it down to common language which people in the foundation can understand. And they thought I was the best person. And this is where the immunology and etc. came in handy. So I could talk to people like Agandip Kang or somebody who's the head of virology in a department of science and sort of decrypt what they're saying and make it understandable to normal people, right? Simplify it, right? So, that work in COVID, it actually touched about 7 crore people or so. Wow. And I was a very small cog in the whole thing. But I was an important cog. Important cog, yeah. Well, that's very inspiring, and I feel like we should, I want to know more details, but I understand I don't have time. We never have enough time. Great. What's the way we can stay inspired? What is the way we can stay in touch with you? My LinkedIn is there. RamG Vallath is my LinkedIn, and anybody can reach out to me. I'm always open to supporting people. I dedicate time whenever people reach out to me to see how I can best help them. And so in my counting of millions, I don't lose track of the fact that every single person who reaches out to me is an important person. Great. And if you have to, while you have shared all kind of advice around change and what strength has helped you, if you have to actually give an advice to people who have everything and still resisting change, what would you say? Because it seems that there is so much of information, gyan available, but still a lot of people are not picking up their own change, which is due, like long due. What do you say to them? I think the important thing is for people to reflect. No? I think what helped me during the whole thing was also reflecting on what my purpose in life is and having an idea what it is, and then seeing and spending time in understanding my strengths, understanding what I can leverage to reach my purpose, and then constantly working on every single day, working on getting a little closer to that goal. So having a purpose, constant reflection about yourself, understanding yourself better, understanding what holds you back better, and then taking learning from everywhere and anywhere. I think these are the steps that I would really suggest. And you know what? Another curious question comes to my mind at this time, that I think we think about purpose of life only when we are pushed to adversity. That is right. True. I think that is true.
how can we be proactive? Because I've seen these questions only arising when I'm pushed to the wall. I have no option left.
Actually, maybe, I should rephrase what I said. I had a purpose in life earlier also, which is
Okay.
when everything was going well, my purpose was to become as rich as possible, as early as possible, become the global CEO of a Fortune 100 company at the age of 45.
Sure. Yeah.
The purpose
Was
changed,
there. Purpose changed.
right? I think everybody would have some vague idea of a purpose in their lives, to be rich or be famous, be successful, whatever it is. The idea would be to maybe actually crystallize that into a sentence, which then can guide you every step of your way. So there is some clarity in your mind as to what exactly you want to reach. And that's where reflection helps.
You're making me more curious about this. Now, you said the purpose got reframed with a new situation. Now, I'm sure it was not about the abilities.
In a way, yes, right? I knew that I could no longer aspire to be a global CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And so I looked at myself from ground up. So what really makes me happy? What is it that, and then a lot of my childhood, what I have, the life that I led and how my parents guided me, some of those things came into my mind. And
So
I was part of a movement where we were helping poor people, etc., as a child itself.
Yeah.
So some of those social aspects came into my mind. And that's when touching a million lives positively became the dream.
Right.
So it's about reflection, right? It's a deep reflection about
deep
yourself.
reflection. Yeah. And you referred to your childhood to see what is more meaningful at this stage of life, right? And then the new
given my
purpose
new
emerged.
abilities.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying my disabilities, but given my new set of abilities which I can leverage.
Yeah, you relooked at yourself and redefined your purpose based on what you want now.
Exactly.
Great. So is there any question I did not ask you about your change round?
No. So one of the biggest distractors I've had in my life of late, and which I'm now conquering, is the smartphone.
Okay.
That's taken up a lot of time because there is so much of interesting content out there, and I keep going back to interesting content. So I need to conquer that now to be able to write my next few books.
What is in line? What is coming up?
Oops and the Planet of the Apps. That's a continuation of my wacky science fiction.
I like the titles you're keeping.
Then there is another one which I want to write. It's about being happy. The title is a very interesting title, which I don't want to share right now.
Okay, sure, we can keep the secret on. But we do want listeners to, if you want to know the new book, just keep following Ram on
RamG Vallath on LinkedIn.
RamG Vallath on
every week I post 3 times, and I think many of those posts are very nice. So I'm being very modest.
That's fine. You're owning it up. And that's exactly what we want in I'm the Change podcast. So RamG, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story here and inspiring us. See you sometime soon in this podcast back.
Thank you.
With new stories of change.
Thank you so much for letting me bring out this story, and really appreciate that. And I wish you all the very best on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.